Coming up on No Pulp, we recap the first weekend of March Madness.
And we go back to when Ryan Bridges stole the Juicer Championship from me, and I take my rightful seat on the throne.
We got a recap of the Juicer Championship. We've also got final words, plays of the weekend, which will feature a lot of basketball, and a preview of the Sweet 16. That's all ahead on No Pulp.
Kansas State has been on fire this year.
Missouri is one of the most fraudulent teams in college basketball.
And it was proved
They're not going to fire him. He's the best player in program history.
Side to Lawrence for the win. Yes, he got it.
She is the Shohei Ohtani of college softball. This is a team that's potentially going to be a top 10 team in the country.
How you feeling?
I'm excited to win the Juicer.
LSU has captured its very first national championship.
We are ready to break down the first weekend of March Madness for you here on No Pulp. Hi again, everybody. Andrew Selover, Ian Nicholas, back one more time inside the CitrusTV studios. Ian, maybe not as many upsets as people were used to, but still a great weekend of basketball nonstop. And let's start with the conferences that really succeeded, because that was a big storyline. SEC obviously getting that record-breaking number of teams in. First round, though, headlined by the Big Ten going undefeated.
Yeah, I did not see that coming. I mean, I understand that they've had a long-standing tradition of college hoops, but heck, I mean, Purdue seems to upset us every single year. I had High Point winning that game, and you know what? Their student broadcasters and their aura from the sideline nearly propelled them to that victory. Michigan, a tough test and a great game against UC San Diego. They pulled through after a strong start. Izzo, March, Michigan State, the Crab Five, and the Big Queen with the big shot. I mean, all of these teams seem like they're peaking right now, and that's what's exciting about what the Big Ten has given us so far in March.
It comes as a bit of a surprise. The last few years had really built up some narratives about conferences in terms of how they would perform come March. ACC had built up a rep of they might not get many teams in, but they're going to win. Big Ten had built up a rep of they're going to get a lot of teams in, and then they're all going to lose. But those kind of flipped this year because the Big Ten succeeded mightily in that first round. Not many of those were even close. Struggled a little bit in that second round. They lost 4 of their bids out. Closest one there, Wisconsin had a great shot but couldn't get it done. So did Oregon. Those two teams could have made it through but didn't.
Yeah, you know, you had Wisconsin, like you said, that really fought till the very end, and Oregon, which had such a strong end of the season, finally healthy this year. Illinois and Brad Underwood, they had another great game, but they couldn't finish it out. So as you said, that record 14 bids for the SEC, the most out of any conference all time into the NCAA tournament. But it didn't matter because you see on the right side of your screen, just a few wins away was the Big Ten with a lot less teams. And the ACC, I mean, we can talk more about that in a second. A total joke from the few teams that they even got in the tournament. But you never know what's going to happen when the calendar flips to March.
Yeah, another year where the Mountain West really struggles as well. Let's talk about the SEC. They get that record-breaking number of teams in, and it felt like the top half of that SEC in terms of the teams they got in, they've all done quite fine, and they've made it through. They've got 7 teams. That's another record in the Sweet 16. But the bottom group, the teams that were kind of on the bubble, your Vanderbilts, your Oklahomas, those teams all, for the most part, escorted out in the first round, Ian.
Yeah, I mean, look, we almost lost Florida. You know, Adam Avin had to, shout out our sports director. I don't know what he said to the coaches and the players at the end. Dan Hurley was working for the Gators. Who knows? But like you said, I mean, it's just a shame. We'll talk about it a little bit more as we roll on here in our first segment of the show. How the Mountain West, the WCC, your favorite conference in the country. I mean, if you weren't in that big 3, it just felt like you didn't belong this year. Although there were some good games, it just, the grand feel, it didn't feel like March Madness, which was a real shame.
Yeah, it really felt like it was kind of a lot of chalk there in that first few rounds. And we talked about how the Big Ten got their teams through and the Big 12, and you really have none of those underdogs that have made it into the second weekend.
Yeah, I mean, we only have 4 conferences represented in all of the Sweet 16 And Duke is the lone representative from the ACC. 7 teams, Andrew, from the SEC alone, like we've already highlighted. That is a record for the most teams of a single conference. So the narrative all season ending up being true that the SEC had the money, they had the players, and they do have the guys and the coaches to get this far.
Yeah, I don't know that this will be the normal, though. I think this might be an outlier when it comes to March Madness. There's some real concern with people that you're never going to see another story like Princeton or St. Peter's or Loyola Chicago. I don't think that's true because we've already seen in this tournament, you can go down on any given night, whether you're a great team or not. We saw it with McNeese in that first round. They held Clemson to 13 points. I would consider Clemson a team that was probably better than Purdue. I expected Clemson to win those first 2 games.
Yeah, I had them in the Final Four.
Exactly. And it didn't matter because they just did not bring their A game for the first half of that game against McNeese, and so they were out. Colorado State was so close to making it to that second weekend. I'm still convinced that UC San Diego could have made the second weekend had they not been matched up with a Michigan team that was criminally underseeded at 5 and coming off the Big Ten title.
They did have a tough end of the season, though.
They won the Big Ten championship. I don't know what tough end of the season you were watching.
Tough end of the regular season kind of hurt their overall record.
Sure,
I understand they clinched the auto bid.
But I'm just saying that the way this tournament was set up maybe just didn't help UC San Diego, who could have been that 12 or 13 seed, to make it to the second weekend.
I think the biggest concern is you alluded to a lot of games that were close in the first weekend for these teams that can, throw punches against the bigger dogs. But I mean, you mentioned a couple of teams historically that had made it to the Final Four that are Cinderellas, and it just feels like there are too many really dominant teams in college basketball for these double-digit seeds to win not just one game, but 2, 3. I mean, there's only so much coaching can do.
I don't disagree, but again, I still think maybe it doesn't set up well for, your 8 and 9 seeds to make it through against the 1 seeds who have been so dominant. But if you're a 12 or a 13 seed, like a Colorado State, like a UC San Diego, you're going up against 4 and 5 seeds. I don't think those teams are all of a sudden, because of NIL, untouchable.
Yeah, but they're hard to really build much of a program and to build continuity to have the faith that you can make a run.
It's still not college football where you're going against the 60 best guys on the other side. It's 5-on-5, and you can have good performances in 40 minutes to win a basketball game, in my opinion.
I don't know. It's just tough when you look around college basketball and you see that, Kentucky's point guard used to be on San Diego State when they didn't go on a miracle run, but they went on a great run. You see Michigan, one of their best big men, used to be on Yale. It's just like every time one mid-major dude does something, they're gone the next day.
Yeah, I do think it makes it much tougher to build a program long-term at those schools. That's for sure. 2 guys that have been pretty good at building programs, that's Rick Pitino and that's Coach Calipari. At his new home in Arkansas, he gets the upset in the second round in a real battle between St. John's and Arkansas. Were you surprised that the Hogs did what they did to run the table there in that first weekend?
No, because, first of all, you got to give Rick Pitino his flowers. Everybody has this year. We're not going to be the first guys to tell you just how good a coaching job Rick Pitino has done over 2 years at St. John's. But it feels like the Johnnies just peaked a year early, right? Okay. Because, the Big East is already falling off, right? The Big East is not what everybody thinks it is. I'm not going to be John Fanta and tell you it's the second or third best conference in the country, because it's not. But they overexceeded. They ran the table in the Big East, and they were very highly seeded as a result. But the SEC, it doesn't matter. The 9th or the 10th team is going to be that team that has the talent to go blow for blow with ACC Big East champs.
And here's where I had a problem with St. John's is they just didn't have the firepower to blow teams out. And you could see that all year long in the Big East. They were in a lot of close games against teams that you would expect, okay, that's an easy 20-point win. They just didn't have that firepower to put teams away easily. And as Coach Cal will tell you, they couldn't put the final nail in against the Hogs.
These kids, I'm so proud of them, how they play and fight and persevered. They threw us in the coffin. They just forgot the nails. We pushed it open and we come out.
This is a 13-loss Arkansas team, and now they're in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, but
what's that tell you about Coach Cal?
It tells you he's just as good a coach as Coach Pitino. I mean, he's got an opportunity if they can take down Texas Tech, and maybe they have to run into Florida in the Elite Eight. But they have the talent. They got Boogie Flan back, who missed a good chunk at the end of the regular season. They have the talent to win these games. They have the in-game coaching to win these games. It tells me that I like Coach Cal. I mean, let's be honest. Pitino and Cal are not the most likable guys in the world, but this year, these two have dominated the storylines in college basketball, and to take a team, Andrew, regardless of a conference, from 0-5 in conference play to 11 wins over their last 17 games, unbelievable stuff. His team, Zuby Ejiofor, I give him a lot of credit for St. John's. He was fighting for everything, but the rest of his team wasn't making any shots.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Coach Cal seemed like he couldn't buy a first-round win at Kentucky. He goes to Arkansas as a 10 seed, and he's won back-to-back games. Really impressed with how they managed foul trouble in this game.
Sure.
Because Ivisic and Adu were in trouble all day long. Let's talk about the Johnnies, though. Ejiofor really the only guy that showed up because the two best players for this St. John's team, Kadari Richmond, RJ Lewis, they were no-shows in this one.
Look, I mean, I'm quoting Rick Pitino here. Multiple times, Pitino joked throughout the regular season that when his team shot the ball, he wanted to. And you know why? That showed up at its greatest extent in this game. Those are good players. They're not really shot makers. They're guys who get to the basket. They live and die by chucking up layups and hoping they go in, hoping they can draw fouls, which they kind of did, but not enough to bail them out when you shoot under 30% as a team on the game.
Yeah, and they go 2 of 22 from 3. Trying to get back in the game late when you're down, that's not going to get you back into the contest. And that lack of firepower for St. John's comes back to bite them as they fall out in the second round.
Well, if we want to talk about firepower, how about we shift gears to the women's side, where we have an unbelievable second-round matchup, a regular season rematch between a 3 seed in Notre Dame, which, if you said that at the start of the year, that's crazy. They were a number 1 team in the country in February, and then a 2 seed in the Big 12 champs in TCU. Haley Van Lith, after taking down her former team in Louisville, now she has this team alongside Sedona Prince making absolute history, and now they go up against a juggernaut.
Yeah, first time they've reached this Sweet 16 for TCU. Haley Van Lith doing it at yet another school. It always felt like she was overshadowed by somebody. Now she's the real star.
Yeah.
And that's one of the blessings right now with women's college basketball is you're keeping the best players in the sport for 4 years.
Yep.
And so they can really build names for themselves. These are two of the biggest brands in the game in Hidalgo and Van Lith. And boy, you mentioned a rematch. TCU got Notre Dame by 8 in the Cayman Islands when Hidalgo put up 27 and Van Lith went for 21. Big reason why, Horned Frogs outscored Notre Dame in the fourth quarter 31-12 in that one. These two were the stars of the show. I'd expect the same thing next week.
I will say, though, obviously the talent battle goes to Notre Dame because
100%.
It's not just Hidalgo. It's Olivia Miles, who's battling a little bit of an ankle injury. We'll see how she holds up. She got a little dinged up in their first-round game against SF Austin. And then Sonia Citron, who I think is a Walmart version of Caitlin Clark. She can rip those 3-pointers. She is unbelievable, Andrew, and I think that big 3 is going to be a little bit too much for that dynamic duo that you got with Prince and Van Lith.
So you've got the Fighting Irish in this one. I'd have to agree with you, although both were mighty impressive in their second round wins. I think the narrative on Notre Dame and why they fell to that 3 line, a little surprising, was because of the finish to the regular season. I've really got no question now about them because of the 20-point win against Michigan in the second round.
Yeah, they got their losing out of the way.
Right, and Leah Tu King, you didn't even mention her because she's somehow like the 4th headliner.
She's like the Draymond Green of this group.
It's
unbelievable. She'll clean it all up.
Just when you think they don't have any more stars in South Bend, Notre Dame just keeps adding to that unbelievable roster that they have built. This will be a tough one for TCU. If the Horned Frogs want to pull it off, how many do you think Haley Van Lith needs to put up?
I don't even think it's points. I think it's assists.
Okay.
Right? She had 10 assists in their win that they just picked up to get here against Louisville. I think she might have to have like a 12, 15 assist performance, just shred up whatever defensive game plan that Niele Ivey has. She has to take over and assert herself as the best point guard in the sport.
Both teams dominant so far in the NCAA tournament. I think you can expect a lot of points in this one. But as we mentioned, that fourth quarter when they met earlier this season belonged to TCU. We'll see if Notre Dame can shift the narrative. All right, we're going to take a quick step aside here on No Pulp. We'll see if that man can shift the narrative 100%. When we come back. It's a Juicer Championship rematch from last semester. Ryan Bridges will join us. He'll try and defend the crown against Ian Nicholas after this.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
All right, it's time. Juicer Championship rematch. Ian Nicholas and Ryan Bridges squaring off. Last time we saw this showdown, it was for the crown, and Ryan Bridges took it home. Do you remember that one, Ryan?
I do remember that one, actually, and I actually brought something for Ian so he would remember it. So I'm just going to put that right there and maybe intimidate my opponent.
Whoa.
Wow, a spit.
Yeah.
That would go along with the orange juice that was also poured in that cup.
And the confetti that fell into it. Is this up for grabs, or are you going to hand it over?
No. I mean, he could take it, but it just the ring wouldn't fit.
I'm good. I don't actually want to touch it anymore.
Okay.
And you said
don't disrespect the cup.
It was already spat.
This is like the piston cup. Okay.
The piston cup. Okay, well,
don't let it rust.
I'm
Lightning
McQueen. Lightning McQueen comeback story starts now.
All right, let's see if it does. We're not going to go to you first. We're going to go to the defending champion first here, as we should. We'll let you go men's or women's. Best first round game from March Madness so far.
I'm going to go with the only game that actually had an extra 5 minutes in the first round of either bracket. I'm going with Oregon and Vanderbilt in the women's tournament. This was an excellent game. I mentioned that it went an extra 5 minutes, but it was not slated to go that way at the start. Midway through the third quarter, it was a 19-point lead for the Ducks. People will focus on the biggest lead that happens in the game, but with 7 minutes to go, this was a 15-point lead for the Ducks as well. There's plenty of back and forth. Kanapis ties it with 4 seconds left. Oregon actually got up a pretty good shot at the end of the game to tie it. It barely misses. Several back and forths in the overtime period, but Oregon still pulls off the upset. I think that was pretty thrilling.
Ian, the response?
Yeah, I mean, the only reason why Ryan didn't pick the right one is because his hometown team lost in the men's bracket. UC San Diego losing for the first time since January 18th, and it was against Michigan, as we talked about earlier, Andrew. The Big Ten rolled, but this one, we didn't see the Wolverines roll for the full game. Yes, they got off to a 10-0 run to start the game, but then with 2.5 minutes to go, UCSD, they take their first lead, but Michigan ends up winning by 3 behind their big 7'1" Russian, Vlad Golden. He was unbelievable in this game on both ends, but you know what? UCSD had a chance to win it at the horn. A three-pointer that hit off the back iron with Danny Wolf in the face of one of UCSD's guards. They could have brought it to overtime, but the basket denied those extra 5 minutes.
So I'll tell you this. They were both good games. Both had big comebacks. One had overtime, one didn't. I don't really care about the overtime, though.
Yeah.
The reason that the first point here is going to go to Ian Nicholas is because I'm a fan of the underdog in March Madness, and neither team was really the underdog in your game versus this was a real chance for UCSD, built up as that best mid-major possibly, to get that upset. And they couldn't quite finish it off.
Smart man.
Everyone rooting for them, couldn't quite get it done. That's what March Madness is all about. So you get the first point.
It's all right.
Thank you.
You're welcome, anytime. All right, 2 points up for grabs here in question number 2. Men's tournament, most surprising individual performance. And we'll go back to Ryan.
I'm going to go to the Michigan Wolverines. We just talked about them, but I'm actually going to the second round matchup that they had. Roddy Gale came off the bench with 30 minutes, and he made a difference for Michigan, got him by Texas A&M to get to the Sweet 16. Drops 26 points in this game. That's not only his season high, but you also got to go all the way back to December of 2023 for the last time that he dropped more than 25 points in a game. And if you look at the way that some of these highlights are happening, especially in that Texas A&M game, they were leaving him open. Why? It's from 3. He shot 23% from 3 this year. In this game, he goes above 50%. He shoots 4 of 6. The last time he hit 4 threes in a game was March of 2023. You guys weren't even anchoring this show yet.
All right, we don't need to bring us into it, Ryan. Go ahead, Ian.
Okay.
I'm going to go with a decision that continues to puzzle people days after the game ended, and it's Rick Pitino's decision to bench R.J. Lewis, who, he didn't have a good game. He only finished 3 for 17 against Arkansas. But, I mean, what other options did Rick Pitino have? The whole team, like I said earlier in the show, only shot 30% from the floor. And R.J. Lewis isn't some bona fide scrub like Kwame Brown. He's the Big East Player of the Year. And what's more alarming is what his head coach, Rick Pitino, said earlier in the season. You know, we went on that whole show on Vice, and he was like, up, I'm back. It's not about missing shots. It's about your attitude and your, quote, effing defense. You can't hang your head. I guess RJ hung his head a little too much, and I guess he had to get pulled. Didn't work out for Slick Rick.
Okay, so it's a very different approach from the two of you. One goes for maybe the most outstanding, unexpected scoring performance, and then you go for the most underwhelming performance.
Yes.
But I'll never be surprised by players not showing up in March because there's a lot of pressure, and it always happens. I will be surprised by those bench guys who go for, how many was it? 26? 26, and that is 2 points to Mr. Bridges. It is 2-1 in favor of Ryan. Question 3. 3 points on the line here. That means it's winner take all. We're going to go to Ian. The biggest dark horse to win the title on the men's or women's side, Ian.
When you think of a 3 seed, you don't think of a dark horse.
Okay.
But nobody gives a hoot about Texas Tech and Grant McCaslin. They never have. The reason why I fell in love with March Madness a few years ago was Jarrett Culver and that great run that Texas Tech made. You know why? Because I had him going to the championship that year when nobody else had him going that far. And then this year, I got him going to the Final Four, and I think they could maybe win the whole thing. They don't got Obi Toppin. They got JT Toppin, All-American, giving you 19 and 8 a game. Darian Williams, Andrew, I know you saw him in person in Barclays a few months ago. He's a unicorn, 15, 5, and 4 as a 6'6" bruiser down low. And Chance McMillian coming back from injury, 40% sniper from deep.
Go ahead.
I think about a dark horse as a team that is a lot better than what they're seeded, and that's Notre Dame women's basketball. You guys touched on it a little bit in the last segment of the show, but they are so good, so much better than a 3 seed. They win their first 2 games by over a combined 60 points. They are absolutely decimating every single piece of competition that they have right now. Olivia Miles played 27 minutes off that injury that she has. Now she gets 5 days to rest up. They've got the revenge factor against their next opponent in TCU. I really like where this Notre Dame team is heading, and they got their wake-up call, and they're answering that call right now.
All right, Ryan. Hold us, please.
You guys were tied with UNC Wilmington.
Hey, could we cut it out, guys?
Okay.
Let me get to the verdict here. I've got good news, and I've got bad news for
When he
you.
looks at me first, that's when I know it might be over.
I've got good news, and I've got bad news for
Your
you.
mom coming in for the kid.
The good news that I, in the bottom of my heart, can totally see Notre Dame winning the women's championship. The bad news
is everyone else does.
Everyone else does, so they're not a dark horse. They were the #1 team in the country a month ago. It doesn't matter that they underseeded. It doesn't matter that they underseeded them. You can't get away with picking a former #1 team in the country as the dark horse. Ian's putting his name on the trophy. That doesn't matter.
That he spat on.
He won it. Let's see the standings ahead of this year's playoffs. Ian Nicholas, he gets some points on the board. Ryan, you've got some work to do if you want to defend your title here.
We got time running out this semester.
Where are you? I don't see you.
I've got one more chip than everyone on that list.
We'll give this trophy back to you. I'm sorry that Ian defaced it. We're going to get to a break so that you two can calm down. All right. We need a break. We need a break. Get us to a break, please. We'll preview the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 after this.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back. No Pulp. I don't have my trophy. I'll have it in a couple months for the Juicer tournament. Ian Nicholas alongside.
Mighty confident over there.
Alongside a strong judge. Yeah, well, you've given me the boost. It's hard to beat you.
Yeah, I guess.
And Andrew Selover alongside you. It's time for the part of the show you've probably been waiting for this whole time. What do we think is going to happen? Yeah. And we're going to start now in the Sweet 16 in the South region, where it's the 1 seed Auburn. It's looked a little shaky, but they've gotten to this point against Michigan, who's had some tough battles to get here. And then Ole Miss, Chris Beard and company against Mr. March, Tom Izzo, and Michigan State. What are our thoughts here, Andrew?
My first thought is, if you looked at my bracket, it didn't look like this. I'm swinging 25% on the Sweet 16 teams here in the South Quadrant. I went Louisville and Yale up there, and then I had UNC and Michigan State. Let's talk about that first matchup, Auburn and Michigan. Auburn, the #1 overall seed in this tournament.
Yep.
But I think Michigan's so red hot that they got a shot here after what Vlad Golden did to get them to the Sweet 16 over Texas A&M. He was fantastic. I think when you combo Golden and Wolf down low, they might be able to really contain Janai Broome and maybe the best player in the country in Broome in that Auburn offense.
Yeah, he's been awful this tournament. I mean, that's a big reason why Auburn's been a little shaky through 2 games against that weird first half against Alabama State, and then a fairly close game throughout against Creighton. Broome averaging 11 points, shooting under 40% from the floor. I mean, at this point, this game could decide, if anybody really cares, who wins the National Player of the Year. Is it Broome? Is it Cooper Flagg? If you think it's still up for debate, yeah, Broome runs into a brutal matchup with Dusty May's 2 bigs.
Yeah, and Dusty May has gotten it done in the tournament before, so don't be surprised if that's a close matchup, because as we mentioned, Michigan coming off that Big Ten title, they got tested in that first round matchup against a team that's so new to the NCAA Division I, we don't have their logo yet.
Best game of the first round.
So that should be a fun one in the Sweet 16 here in the South. Let's keep going down the bracket. And let's go to that bottom left quadrant, if we will. We'll go to the West, and that's Florida and Maryland, Texas Tech and Arkansas It's expected up top, maybe a little unexpected with Arkansas taking down St. John's. Ian, is one of those matchups stronger than the other? You think that Florida-Maryland maybe decides who makes the Final Four?
Ooh, that's a great question. First of all, I got to do what you did. And how did I do? I was 3 for 4 here. No, I did not have Arkansas.
Yeah.
At St. John's. I went pretty chalky overall, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yeah, I'm pretty crazy. But going back to your original question of UF versus UMD, yeah, I think either of these teams have a chance to win the national championship. That is not, I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. I am curious, though. I understand that Maryland's riding high off a very emotional win against Colorado State, and Derek Queen, who is probably the best freshman in the country this year, not named Cooper Flagg, really starting to blossom on the national landscape. How do they rebound? I mean, everybody thinks Kevin Willard is going to go to Villanova. He's already a foot out the door. I think Florida is going to use that tight result against UConn to its advantage, and I think it could actually end up being a blowout.
Okay, so maybe instead of that proving that Florida can be beaten, you think it turns into inspiration for Florida, and they turn it on against Maryland. Remember, Maryland lacks depth because that Crab 5 is who they really rely on.
There's no 6 or 7.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of guys off the bench. Meanwhile, for Arkansas, is this a fluke, or can they repeat it in that second weekend? Remember, a team with 13 losses on the year, can they keep it going in the win column?
Yeah, but they're not the same team that picked up all of those losses, because in their last, 11 or 12 games, they only had 2 of them to close out the regular season in the SEC and in the SEC tournament. And now they're at this point. They got Boogie Flambacker, who was their number 2 scorer, and everybody was concerned that they were rushing him back too quickly. That was totally a joke storyline. He's been great in the tournament. They might get their number 1 scorer on the regular season back as well for this game. And if they do, it gives Calipari another piece to make this a close one. I already just told you on the juicer that I think Texas Tech can make a run. They are favored by 5 or 6 points from the original Vegas line. So I do think Texas Tech wins, but I don't think Arkansas ends this really good season under Calipari, their first season under Coach Cal, in any kind of whimper or anything.
Okay, got it. All right, let's talk about that top right. Let's
do it. Everyone's thinking Duke. Right? You know, a team that, Cooper Flagg, second game.
Maybe the most impressive team so far in the tournament, I think.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Mount St. Mary's losses Dan Engelstad, and they get better. Shout out Syracuse.
But they put a rout on Baylor.
Yeah, 23 points. Yeah. And that's, sneaky decent team for Scott Drew this year. Kind of got lost in the shuffle nationally.
Right. And especially at a time where some of the other 1 seeds, you talk about Florida, Houston, they were tested. Duke was not.
Auburn too.
Yep.
Yeah, Duke's been great, but, we already brought him up once on this show. You've got the Blue Devils killer in Caleb Love. He now wears new threads, but in this game against Oregon, he nearly had 30.
Was he good.
And if you want to go back a few years, remember that game that ended Coach K's career when he almost had 30 in the NCAA tournament. Do you think he can single-handedly propel Arizona past Duke?
I think he'll need to if they want to win that game. I think Love needs to show out in the big game, which he did against Oregon. Boy, was he good, and he's been known to do it against Duke. You talk about that 28-point performance. Can the Blue Devils shut him down? I don't know. Can Tyrese Proctor answer what Caleb Love does in this game? But he was great against Baylor. If Tyrese Proctor shoots the way he did against Baylor, Duke's going to win the national championship if he keeps that up.
If Tyrese Proctor is the reason Duke wins a national championship, that would be so weird. They've got such a great freshman class, as they almost always do. That would just be strange. He's been there for a gazillion years in Duke years. Anything that catches your eye outside of offense, and more offense in this Alabama-BYU game?
Yeah, I was interested to see how Alabama's offense would fare against St. Mary's defense, and they continued to pour on the offense.
How far did you have St. Mary's going this year?
I had them in the Elite Eight. I had them winning that game and one more, and they let me down again this year.
Again?
But Alabama's offense proved that they can do it against anybody. If you can put up points against St. Mary's, you can put up points against anybody. I bet the over-under in this BYU-Bama games can be 180-something because that's all these two do.
I've heard other people talking about this game, and they're calling it the race to 95 points.
It might be.
Both teams have averaged 85 a game over their first 2 tournament games. Bama, the best offense in the country. BYU, if you've ever watched them, if you've ever heard Austin Barrick on this show, they've got ball movement you couldn't believe. It might be the most, for especially like the X's and O's hoops guys, might be the most visually pleasing game to watch. I know that's a nerdy way to put it, but that should be fun.
Well, I will give you this. In a year where we haven't had a lot of upsets, I think it does provide you a lot of highly touted matchups and highly anticipated matchups, like maybe that Duke-Arizona matchup in the Sweet 16, where instead of Duke going up against, say, a Liberty who goes on a run maybe in years past, you get Duke-Arizona, you get Caleb Love against Blue Devils.
I'm sorry, I had VCU here.
Right.
They didn't get anywhere close. But no, this is really, sometimes that second weekend, in my opinion, maybe I'm a little bit of a casual, gets lost in the shuffle. This year, you've got the heavyweights going at it, and no question, you got to watch every single game because it could go to either team.
Certainly do, and we'll go from the offense of BYU and Bama to Kelvin Sampson's defense and Houston. They had a tough matchup with Gonzaga. Everybody knew that was a tough matchup. If you were going to draw the 8 seed Gonzaga or the 8 seed UConn, you knew you were in store for a tough second-round matchup as a 1 seed.
Yeah.
And Houston, the defense got it done again. Now they'll go against a Purdue team that probably exceeded expectations. I would say under 50% of bracket pickers had Purdue into that second weekend.
Yeah, and that's why I think Purdue's dangerous, because you got to remember, where is this quadrant? It's in Indianapolis.
It certainly
at
is.
Lucas Oil. So you've got that essentially a home crowd. Everybody's going to be flocking from West Lafayette. Houston's a team that historically has stalled out deeper in the NCAA tournament. I understand that, Purdue put the whooping on McNeese, and they made their first 6 shots in that game, and they never looked back. Right. Houston's a different beast. But if I think that Purdue, they get the ball down to Trey Kaufman-Wren, and Braden Smith hits a couple of his signature fade line, baseline floaters early in the game, I don't know if Houston can play catch-up. I know they can't. They have never really done that well in the NCAA tournament.
Smith's been fantastic to start this tournament. And I'll tell you what, this was a Purdue team that was not playing its best basketball at the end of the regular season into the Big Ten tournament, but they found their groove just in time. Feels like they're right back into form, and maybe they get that upset of Houston in their home state of Indianapolis in what should be a heavy Boilermakers crowd. Then you go down to a couple of big-time showdown SEC teams.
Yeah.
They've faced each other before. Just like Duke and Arizona will be a rematch, this will too. Kentucky and Tennessee. Who makes it farther, Coach Cal or Coach Pope?
I think Coach Pope.
Okay.
I'm a big believer in this Wildcats team. They have rounded in the form in the NCAA tournament. I understand maybe the competition not as stiff. Troy in the first round was easy. Illinois, not so much in the second. But you got to remember, Andrew, Kentucky's beaten Tennessee twice this year, including once without their point guard, who does everything for this kind of do-it-by-committee group in Lamont Butler, who we all know from his San Diego State run. There's a reason I brought this up earlier in the show. This guy is made for these moments. Tennessee, maybe the best roster in this tournament.
Yeah.
And I get it. Rick Barnes, one of the best coaches in this tournament. But I think it's time for the new blood to shine through. And it would be kind of crazy if both Kentucky and Arkansas found themselves in the Elite Eight with first-year head coaches.
Boy, wouldn't that be something. I tell you this, though. It's hard for me to pick against Tennessee because they've got not only experience, but experience that has played together for a long time.
Sure.
Led by Zakai Ziegler, who can really play some good defense like that Houston team can. So
Chaz Lanier.
So I'll go against you, and especially if Chaz Lanier's knocking down threes. Good night, Kentucky. I'll go Tennessee here in this matchup. Should be a lot of fun. Sweet 16 on the horizon Thursday and Friday. That's your preview. We've got just one more segment here on No Pulp. We'll take a quick break.
Here we go. We're gonna go out there in the rain. We're gonna get wet. All right, here we go. Oh, okay, quick. Oh yeah, yes. So much fun. Mwah. Yeah, Dad. We're getting so wet.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes? B, console her?
Don't worry, sweetie. This is gonna happen a lot.
Or C, find her a new boyfriend?
Nice, single boys. That was weird.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Back here on No Pulp, as we finish up, we're going to go to our plays of the week. Andrew and Ian back with you. Ian, I'm going to take you a little off the beaten road here for my final word. We're going to the world of JUCO ball.
Sure.
Let's go JUCO NCAA tournament. Connor State, Snow College, DJ Dormu with the game winner. This is the 1 seed against the 17 seed, and it's 17 seed Connor State, thanks to Dormu's buzzer beater, goes behind the back. He hits it. First loss since November for Snow to knock them out. They were 32-1, and DJ Dormu says, I don't care. We're going to the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I can't tell if they were the 17th seed or the 17th team in the country, but shout out him. I mean, that was like some Chris Smooth YouTube stuff with the splash and the behind the back. That was awesome. I've also got a buzzer beater, but it's the one you've definitely seen a million times on social media, not Snow, whatever the heck. It's the Queen taking down Colorado State. Did he travel? Does it matter? Who cares? I mean, this is an unbelievable shot. The first buzzer beater in March Madness with time expiring since Lamont Butler. This is the third time I brought him up in this show. I'm just the biggest Lamont Butler fan. Derek Queen with the shot clock and the game clock fading down, getting Maryland deeper in the tournament. If you don't know this guy now, remember the name. He's going to be a top 5 pick in the NBA. He's a little Al Jefferson throwback guy. He is a fundamental old school big man.
All right, Ian, time for our final words. And for my final word here on No Pulp, I'm taking you to the world of women's college ice hockey. Let's go to the national championship, where for the third straight year, it was Ohio State and Wisconsin in the NCAA Women's Ice Hockey National Championship. Last year, it was the Buckeyes who got it done. This year, it's the Badgers, thanks to junior Kirsten Sims. Down by 1, 20 seconds left. How about the Dangles jukes out the goalkeeper and scores on a penalty shot that Ohio State conceded because they held the puck inside the crease with one of their defenders. So Sims scores there, sends it to overtime. Then off the rebound, 2 minutes into OT, she wins it for Ohio State. Normally, you can only have the game winner or the game tying goal. She has both of them in the span of 3 minutes of game time. Kirsten Sims all alone sending that national championship back to Madison with Wisconsin and the Badgers.
You had the national championship in women's ice hockey. I've got the national championship in wrestling. Is this the first time we've brought up wrestling on No Pulp? Well, I got a good reason for it. I was out and about on Saturday night, as any college student would be, right? And I see Donald Trump on ESPN. Don't worry, we're not going to get political here, but there's a reason. He was watching the College Wrestling National Championship, which in theory should be Gable Steveson of Minnesota, who had won 70 consecutive matches in his collegiate career, winning over relatively unknown Wyatt Hendrickson at Oklahoma State. But you know what? With Hendrickson trailing late in the match, he took down Steveson, an Olympic wrestling champion back in 2020, in what was called instantly in the moment on the ESPN broadcast, the greatest upset, Andrew, in the history of the sport. That was unbelievable and just like so American. It was like an American absolute unbelievable moment to have a college athlete hugging the sitting president. I mean, you never see anything like that What a moment for Hendrickson and Oklahoma State.
And how rare is it to see an Olympic medalist still at the collegiate level competing?
Guys like 25.
And not just competing, but then losing. That's unbelievable stuff there from Ian's final word. We try and get to the mainstay stuff with college basketball, and we'll toss you a little under-discovered stuff when we finish up. Women's ice hockey and some wrestling to close it out. March Madness Sweet 16. Enjoy it, everybody. That does it for Ian and Andrew on No Pulp.